Welcome to 2024 from Unplug with Mel. Happy New Year, everyone. I am your host, Mel Mosier. We ended 2023 with our special guest, Michelle Harris. I kept singing those song lyrics of the tune of Isn't She Lovely? Because getting to know her was just that. It was lovely. From her career in the military and all the challenges that come with that, from second guessing herself, for knowing the limits on her growth plan, to finding joy in all things, and what to look forward to in the season of life that she's in. Michelle is just someone that continues to encourage others and is one to have in your circle. She's dedicated to hot sherm and much more through Texas Sherm, and I cannot wait when I get to see her again. I hope you have time to check into her episode. Now we're on to a pretty cool guy as our next guest, Ken Noble of Noble Leadership Solutions. LinkedIn is a pretty powerful tool for networking, and I'm thankful for it. I share that I've gotten my life coaching certifications, and he reached out. And for the past half a year, I've gotten to get to know Ken on a very deeper level. And we get to dive into his story now. We're exploring leadership, navigating plans that go a little crazy, the resilience needed to realign and keep pushing forward. Don't miss this episode. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and more. Let's discover the wisdom Ken has to share. Welcome to Unplug with Mel. I'm your host, Mel Mosier, and our special guest today is the lovely Ken Noble from Noble Leadership Solutions. Ken, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming on and telling your story to inspire infinite growth, because that is the ultimate theme here with Unplug with Mel. A little background for our audience. I met Ken through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it kind of said like first, second connection or whatever. And it looked like you were still in Midland, but you weren't once we got to connect. And I had just wrapped up my certification into life coaching, and you reached out going, "Hey, fellow life coacher, I'm one too." And we had a
Yeah.
one-on-one, and it went so well that I wrote your name down to come on this podcast, because it's an early project of mine. Oh, well, it's been quite a few years since I've wanted to do a podcast, but as you grow your network,
Yeah.
whose story can transpire and motivate, hearing yours as a life coach and in leadership, it really inspired me. And I'm like, you know what? There's some people out here today that need to hear Ken's story. And so, Ken, what I do here is I let you introduce you and your bio, your work, community projects, family, all of the lovely things that kind of make you who you are. So, what I like to ask is, Ken, who are you? What's your
Oh,
story?
goodness. Well, who am I? Man, that's a multifaceted question. I'm a man of many talents,
I
but
love it.
um, so gosh, I guess I would have to just tell you first and foremost that for me, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I have my own business. I started Noble Leadership Solutions in 2017. I actually incorporated it, not incorporate LLC, filed it, whatever that is, right? In December of 2017, after I'd gotten certified through the John Maxwell team as a coach, speaker, and trainer. Um, I am really called as a leader of leaders, and there's a little bit of a backstory to that. I was in ministry for almost 20 years before I went full time into my business. Of course, I went full time in my business in July of 2019. An interesting time to start a business. Um, but yeah, I started my company in December of 2017, and just kind of played around with it. And then, actually I started generating income, and I was like, okay, well, this is kind of cool. Um, that was never my intention, getting the certification and all of that. And so, yeah, I ended up. It's a funny thing about ministry and paid ministry because I'd gotten saved kind of later on in life. As far as for those of you who aren't Christian, that's kind of what we call it when we have our conversion, spiritual encounter with God. Um, and so I immediately had gotten plugged in to my church, and then started volunteering. And before I knew it, I was leading. And several years later, I got ordained after I'd done some Bible college. But it was a very small church that couldn't afford to pay me, and so I was there 7 years, and then I left my corporate career and to went to work as a chaplain for a hospice organization. Did that for a couple of years, and then I ended up moving away from my hometown of Big Spring to Arkansas, and was on staff at a church there for 6 years. That was a much bigger church. We would call it a large church. Then I ended up back in Midland, where I went on staff at a mega church. And when you're in a mega church, there's lots of benefits and lots of things that are positives, but there's also things that sometimes you kind of just do what you have to do and what you're told to do. And I ended up in a position that really didn't, it just really didn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Excite me, right? I love
Mhm.
Sundays, right? I love that part of the ministry, right? And that part of my job. I was, shaking hands and kissing babies and all those things that pastors do, right? I guess I would call it an associate pastor. I was known as the connections pastor there. And I ended up in that position because I was getting prepared to possibly church plant. Well, that was in 2017. 2017 was a very rough year for me and my family. And so, with that being said, it was something that I didn't know that I was ready to do. And then the transition happened, and it was definitely not something that I was okay with the transition. But then as the transition progressed, it just was like, oh, this is definitely not what I signed on for, kind of a thing. And so I kind of went through this transition period. And, you know, as that time in that position progressed, of course, that was I guess it was August of 2017 when I moved to that new position. And, of course, that was exactly the same time where I got certified through the John Maxwell team as a trainer, coach, and speaker, which I'd been doing all of those things before. It was just now I had something to hang on the wall that said it was official, right?
Mhm.
And so, fast forward through 2018, man, it was just like, this really is just, it doesn't suit me. And, you kind of look around and go, okay, well, what else could I do if I'm not doing this? It's what I've known for literally 20 years at that point almost. And, one of my direct report, um, he was more, he was involved in the coaching kind of world, and so he was asking me questions. Well, if you could do anything, and you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
one of those popular questions we ask people as we coach them. And I told him, and he goes, well, okay, what are some other things? And I said, well, honestly, I would take what I do with the Maxwell team, right? Because I was actually uh, raising money on this, doing all the things that I loved. I was going and I was taking time off of work to do public speaking. I was taking days off of work to go and do leadership training and development. At night, I was doing, mastermind meetings, which is very similar to small group kind of gathering together and discipleship and those kind of things. So it was hitting all of my sweet spots. And so, with that being said, I was like, I could go do this, and they're like, well, can you make money at that? I was like, actually, I can make 3 times what I make as a pastor, which you can. I mean, there is the coaching and training industry is a very lucrative field. And So that was kind of what launched me into my journey of entrepreneurship. And so I went full time in July of 2019. my first month was great. I did well. I basically made the same income that I made, in my paid job. And then things kind of went south real fast. Um, you know, it We had some health issues that popped up, had some family issues that popped up. Uh, and I'm great at what I do, but marketing and understanding all of that when I first launched into my business was something that I thought I was going to have lots of support and have this network of people that were going to help me and do all of these things. And really, what you think of support and what they think of support, is not the same thing. And so you're like, what do I do now? Right.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
you're on this fast track of trying to knock on doors and, you know, connect with people and, you know, trying to figure out how to make it happen. You know, I established the premier leadership training and development there in Midland, Odessa. There was nobody else doing it at the time. There were lots of people that had Maxwell certification like what I had, even mentorship. And I was an executive director, right? There were several people that were doing that had the same pedigree, so to speak, but nobody was actively pursuing reaching out to oil companies and, really serving the community. It was all, you know, sometimes it would be like an HR professional like yourself who got certified so that they could teach the material within their company that they worked for. Some people just went and did it because they loved John Maxwell, and you know, other people they took it and used it to maybe they were in education and those kind of things. So yeah, it was very interesting the way it all panned out. And then there was this little thing that happened. I don't know if you heard about it, but there was this little virus going around called
Just
COVID.
just just a little bit.
Yeah, so COVID happened, right? So one thing that happened, right, is I went full time with my business in July. Well, along about August, September, everyone is thinking about fourth quarter, which is usually holidays, end of fiscal year for some, all of those kind of things. And so they're not thinking of leadership training and development, right?
Mm, no.
Um, yeah. And so I had no clue, right? I mean, it's like, oh, this is great. Everybody wants this because I love it. So just as kind of everything was opening up after the holidays, everything was shutting down because of COVID. And so literally, I had some very big clients that I was finally going to start getting some good paydays for. And then COVID happened, and the phone started ringing. They said, hey, spring break happened, and then they were like, nobody can be in groups of 10 or more. And literally, as soon as they announced that, the next day, my phone started ringing. Hey, we're going to have to cancel that leadership thing. Oh, that conference we were going to have, we're not going to do that conference. And all of a sudden, you're just like, you've got to be kidding me, right?
Mhm.
So, so yeah, that was interesting. In that time, we found out that my father-in-law had had a fourth occurrence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and so this time, because he'd been on some different chemotherapies and things like that in the past, he was going with the more aggressive one. The doctors decided on a more aggressive one, and my wife was very concerned. And for the first time in almost 20 years, we weren't locked into a church, and we had the freedom to, move, and do whatever. And so we fasted, we prayed, we sought the Lord, and felt like, yes, moving closer was the right thing to do. And we felt like Waco was the place to do it. So in the middle of the pandemic, we moved to Waco. And we ended up here in June of 2020. And I knew zero people. And so I was looking for a job, right? Because that's, I'm a Gen Xer, right? If, you just go and you got to do what you got to do in order to do what you got to have, And so I was just looking for any kind of a job. And I hadn't looked for a job in over 20 years, right? And so it's one of these things where the application process is all different now. It's all through Indeed and LinkedIn and Glassdoor, and the algorithm looks for certain things. I couldn't even get a job as a manager at PetSmart.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously, because of my background in the corporate world, where I was a maintenance director for a large healthcare system. I ended up getting a job for a handyman company, and what the secretary told me I would be paid was not what I was going to get paid when I got there, and did my final interview and started to work. Handyman is a loose term. I actually was doing very hard physical labor, deconstructing some stuff. And every morning when I woke up, I heard in my soul, you can work hard to build your dream, or someone will pay you to work hard to build their dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for 1 week, came home hurting and sore. I mean, West Texas boy, born and bred in the desert for the most part, uh, transplanted to Central Texas in June.
Nope.
Yeah,
Not
and so
like,
humid,
whoa.
yeah, humid, hot, all the things, and you're just like, what in the world? And my wife was like, honey, stop trying to kill yourself for $16 an hour,
Yep.
right? Like literally in my pastoral, when I was on staff as a pastor, I was very well paid. I mean, not oil field wages paid, right? But I mean, it was definitely better than $16 an hour, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So so yeah, it was and she was like, look, she was just encouraging, look, go do what. I was like, I've got to do something to earn money. She goes, I believe in you. Go do what you love to do. My father-in-law, he's always been extremely supportive. And he's like, Ken, you're so gifted. He goes, go, just take a chance. And so I walked in the next Monday in nice business casual clothes, and my boss goes, you don't look like you're ready to work today. And I said, well, not for you. I said, I'm going to go ahead and go work on building my company here in Waco. And I went and I signed up for the Waco Chamber and started virtual networking, because that's what we did, in June
Mm-hmm.
of 2020.
Yep.
Everything was via Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
I joined BNI. I joined another networking group called Master Networks. And as the world opened up, I got to go out and network more. And then, thankfully, I guess it was probably April, maybe even May, I'd gotten a call back from Diamondback Energy, right? And they were like, hey, we want to know, can you do your leadership training and development via, Zoom? It wasn't Zoom, it was Microsoft Teams, but, can you do it via, teleconference? I was like, absolutely. Never done it before in my life, but I was absolutely, I can, right?
You're gonna
Um,
learn. Yeah.
yeah. And so you're gonna learn today. And so yeah, that's exactly what I did, man. And so that helped to tide us through. Um, my wife had gotten a job here, and that was kind of, we literally moved here by faith. She got a job interview the last week of May. No, maybe it was I feel like it was towards the latter part of May. And she was driving down for the interview, so we loaded up her Explorer, hitched my truck to my trailer, loaded down my trailer and my truck, and we came to Waco. And while she was at her interview, we were putting stuff in storage. And then when she was done, we went, house hunting, because we were like, we're coming. This may not be the job, but we're coming. And so it all worked out. And I've made some amazing friends, acquaintances. Waco's been very, very good to us in the 3 years that we've been here, a little over 3 years. And so, yeah, it's not easy being an entrepreneur and a business person. I've had to make a lot of pivots and switches, you know, um, coaching was always a part of what I did because I'd actually taken my first kind of coaching certification in 2015, and it really helped me as a pastor
Yeah.
help, people in the congregation when they needed, counseling or
Mhm.
whatever, right? Um, and so, you know, getting the extra training through the John Maxwell team. And of course, you're always wanting to hone your craft. So I did some coaching for free, did some, things like that. But my main point was I'm going to do leadership training and development because I believe that if you create better leaders, you create a better world, right? Better leaders in a company and organization makes a better workplace for the employees, which if employees are happy at their work, they come home and they're happier people. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Mhm.
so to me, I think leadership is the key. And my mentor and friend John Maxwell says this all the time: everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yep.
Whether it's personal leadership or leadership from top down or bottom up, however you want to look at it.
Yep.
So I love leadership training. I'm gifted at it. I've raised up and equipped a lot of phenomenal leaders. I have a legacy that I've left behind in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. And so I took it to corporate, and it's been interesting. I've had to learn a lot. Of course, during 2020, I had to pivot from that leadership training and development to the coaching role because I could do one-on-one coaching and not break any COVID rules. Um, and then at 21, it was like, okay, I know how to coach and I'm good at coaching. I get lots of good results from my clients. I just don't have enough clients. So I have to promote coaching, right? That's what I've got to market because I was, calling companies. No, we're still not having anybody in. We're still not gathering. I'm like, okay. So 2021, it was like trying to figure out how to build a coaching business. And then 2022 was learning how to market coaching business. 2023 has been all of the above, right? Because I mean, there's so many different ways to market and build and streamline. And of course, I had a major accident in the middle of all of this as well.
Mm.
So
Another setback.
yeah, another setback, right?
Wow.
I'm actually still on a cane. So um, so yeah, so almost a year and a half later, I'm still recovering from that accident.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, you have to be incredibly resilient if you want to start your own business or company. You've got to be willing to work hard, and you work to improve, not to prove.
That's
Um,
good. Mhm.
it's one of these things where it's a continuous improvement process where you're trying, you're testing, you're failing, you're editing and re-entering. You know, and so yeah, it's interesting to say the least. So
That's a
I don't know.
lot. No,
Yeah,
that's a lot in that journey to
yeah,
unpack there, but it's good unpacking because you said a lot of good sound bites in there. What I want to circle back to is
yeah,
adaptability. You have to adapt. You have to shift your perspective and still keep going little by little, taking the small steps of faith
yeah,
instead of these big ones because you
yeah,
can't really risk everything. You already have all your eggs in this basket, Ken. You really did. Moving to Waco, help your father-in-law, you left the church
yeah,
industry, you starting this noble leadership solutions
yeah,
in those moments of doubt
yeah.
or even feeling like a failure because we all have those. How did you maintain motivated and keep your eyes on the objectives? Like
Yeah.
besides your faith, I know that's
Yeah.
critical there,
Yeah.
but what was there some daily routine tasks that you did
Yeah.
to kind of like, I mean, trust me, it's
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
You didn't have a really paying job. You got
Mhm.
more rejection than
Yeah.
progress. What got you out of bed?
So I'm going to be very, very honest with you
This is
and
what
your
Unplug with
listeners.
Mel is all about.
I hit a major depression in, gosh, it started probably towards the end of August and just spiraled down, um, to the point where I literally had an anxiety slash panic attack while giving a presentation in
Mm,
January. I'd been speaking for 20 plus years at this
mhm,
point, and I literally had a meltdown. And I
mm,
just was like, "Hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm gonna have to excuse myself." And I mean, it was just crazy. And there were a lot of things that were factored into that, right? I recognized that I was starting to go into depression. I'd been clinically depressed, been diagnosed clinically depressed since probably 2010 or so. And I recognized that I was heading towards depression, kind of a deeper level. And I went to my doctor. I'm like, "Hey, I think might need to adjust my meds. I've been on these same meds for literally almost 10 years at this point, off and on, right?" Um, and so she ended up putting me on some other meds, but it made it worse.
mm,
And I told her, I was like, "This is not working." And she kept adjusting and it wasn't helping. And she'd increase the dose and it wasn't helping. And finally, I literally in January, or maybe it was the beginning of February, I was like, "Listen, you you've got to get me off of this, or I'm just going to quit taking it." I was like, "This is not working for
mhm,
me." But no matter how depressed I got, I was never suicidal. None of those things, right? I mean,
mm,
it was, and just as I was climbing out, this when the pandemic hit. But if you go back to my social media, and my business promotions and all those things, you can see that I virtually went silent from, gosh, probably it was probably mid-September of 2019 all the way until probably April or May of
mm,
2020. And so, yes, faith was a key factor for me in that, right?
mhm,
Um, and I just remember that every morning, even when my depression would be at its peak, um, I would get up, I would take my daughters to school, and then I would come home and I would read my Bible, I would journal, and then I would just go to bed until it was time to pick them up from school, right?
mhm.
And a lot of that was I was journaling, but I was also doubting whether or not I heard God, because God, didn't you call me into this? I mean, didn't we fast and pray and decide like this was where I was supposed to do? And and you're questioning, did you make the right choice and all the things, right? But in all of it, my faith told me that yes, um, God had called me to this, and that I knew because of my faith, right, that all things work together for good,
Mhm.
right? So that it's essentially all things happen for a reason, and whatever it is that I'm going through when I come out, not if, but when I can't
Yep.
come out on the other side as a winner, I'll be able to turn around and help someone else,
Well, that's
right?
the whole point in that. It's
Yeah.
showing that even us in either an entrepreneurial level or a
Yeah.
leadership level or as a top CEO, the humanity
Yeah.
is that we all can suffer
Oh, yeah.
from a downward spiral that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And what that does in that season is show that we are vulnerable. We're not immune.
Yeah.
Learn through the COVID thing. It did not discriminate who it was infecting.
Nope.
It was just here, and we're
Yeah.
all in this boat together. But it's affecting our seasons differently.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
when we take that pause to self-reflect and look back, I love that analogy of turning back around and picking up the next
Yeah.
person, and they turn around and pick up the next person, because that is reality. And if anything in COVID that it taught us
Yeah.
is that we're not meant to do this world alone. Yes, we were told to isolate, but not isolate from humanity.
Yeah.
Like still plug in where you can,
Right.
go virtual in leadership training, go
Yeah.
virtual in connecting with your coworkers, different in HR with one-on-ones. And it's okay. And maybe it turned in one-on-ones twice a week instead of once a
Yeah.
month, because you can't go visit each other in the office to vent or lean
Yeah.
in heavily. But it was more of, okay, we have a huge need here, and to keep them engaged and motivated, understand that the payroll is coming, your bills are going to be paid. You just can't leave your home right now. And if
Yeah.
you do get sick, here, we were sending out weekly reminders of how to cope through COVID. Even if you weren't the one infected and it was your household infected or whatever, how to stay well from not just the germs, but in your physical mindset, because
Yeah.
depression. If you're an engaging person, if you're a people person and you're told not to leave your house,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you feel like the enemy is coming at you going, see, I got you where I want you.
Yeah.
And that's the isolation part of it. And you have to go, okay, dear friend, I miss you. I know we can't go hang out, but do you have 30 minutes to
Yeah.
FaceTime me? Because I would love to, see your face, hear your voice, and not just through this texting that we are so quick to do.
Yeah.
And it was really changing that narrative that just because the world shut down, that we had to shut down too.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Well, and I'll be honest, right? I came from the church world, right?
Mhm.
And when you exit full-time ministry to go into marketplace, right? Um, or marketplace ministry, right? Because I mean, I still consider a lot of what I do is still pastoring and pastoring people. I mean, I may not be saying, "Do you know Jesus? Can I send you some literature?" Right? I mean, it's it's not like
More
that.
of how can I help you lead? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, when I'm talking about leadership and I pull out a biblical principle, I'll say in my favorite book, it says, whatever scripture I pull out, right? And then I just talk about, my faith. I'm pretty open about my faith. But in some cultures, there's some business cultures, they said, hey, please don't share about, your time in the church world, blah, blah, blah. And so I had to just talk about how I served in a nonprofit and led teams in a nonprofit and those kind of things, right? But I say all that to say that when you walk out of or you leave or transfer from ministry into the marketplace, you're not as applauded as much as when you leave the marketplace to go into ministry,
That's
right?
true.
And so, no matter how godly the world thinks that you may be, there's people that are kind of going, "Ooh, maybe what, what, maybe." I think maybe he's missing it, right? And so, if you leave ministry to go into the marketplace and things aren't butterflies and daisies riding on unicorns eating rainbow cookies, you know, um, people kind of go, "Oh, I mean, you see, you miss God, right? God would never
Yeah.
do
The
that."
peanut gallery begins to speak.
Um, for me, it whenever I was really, really struggling, I felt, and I know this sounds bad, and a lot of it is pride, probably.
Mhm.
Well, no, I'll just tell you, it was pride, right? I didn't want to reach out to my church friends and tell them how hard and difficult it was because, right, I didn't want I wanted the appearance that everything was fine. Right now,
Yeah.
then my best friends, my good friends that knew me, knew I was struggling, and they would come. Literally, they would come to my house and drag me out of my house, take me to lunch.
There you go.
I couldn't eat. I dropped 40 pounds in a matter of 40 days. I mean, it was just like, and part of that was I knew I was in a difficult season. And so I was fasting and seeking the Lord. But even then, I still, eating was like a chore. Showering was a chore, all these things,
That's
right?
what people don't realize in depression. It's almost like a physical hold on you
Yeah. Yeah.
when you can't lift your head up
Yeah.
or make it to the bathroom to take a shower. Though you'd feel better if you took the shower.
Yeah.
It's just getting there. That
Yeah.
is the problem. And that's the thing in life too. We set our growth plan and our trajectory, like this is what we're doing. I feel led to it, whether it's spiritual or not spiritual. I always say you can't really take the pastor out of the pastor. So it's okay that you went there because it's who you are, Ken,
You're good. I would go back and rewrite. Just
but with the knowledge that you had. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if I had
No,
the knowledge, I would go back and repeat it if I had the knowledge that I have, right? Because the knowledge I have now
would
I
help.
would know how to pivot in the midst of that craziness, right?
So, but that's
Um,
what you're doing now for others.
oh yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
We have to go and endure it and find out the hard way and the best way that we approached it so we can give other people the tools to succeed in their
exactly.
trajectory. And this is why Unplug with Mel exists, because you're going
Yeah.
to hear this today on YouTube or Spotify or whatever and be
Yeah.
like, oh, that changes this whole thing I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And I commend your vulnerability. Suffering from depression
Yeah.
is not an easy feat at all, and it takes a it takes away something quite special in that human being, that
Yeah.
they know they're capable of it, but they just can't see out of that fog until that fog lifts, whether it's help with a therapist, help with medication, or whatever we can do to lift it. And so I commend you on telling that story.
Yeah.
In this journey, we talked a lot about setbacks
Yeah.
and challenges, stuff like that. Is there one particular victory or memorable experience in this that you felt like a peace come over you? Like, okay, I'm going to get through this. This is going to be good. I can see on the horizon the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Honestly, it was when I had thought that we were done for. Like we'd already made the decision to move. I had no clue where the money was going to come from. Um, we literally, people were showing up at our door with checks that said, "Hey, God, we feel like God told us to give you this money," right?
Mhm.
Um, and I just was like, "Okay, God, I know that you've called me to this, right?" And I'm like, "What the heck is going on?" And that's when I got a call from Diamondback, and they're like, "Hey, can you do this remotely via tele?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And it was the largest contract that I ever had. Um, and it literally for probably 5 6 months it sustained us, right? We were able to move. Literally, I would be packing up the house, and then it would be like, oh, okay, I got to go get ready for my training, and I would you know go and set up all my stuff and sit down, and I'd do my training. Or some one time I was even doing it in the garage, and I was like, okay, hi, did my training. And then it's like, okay, we're gonna have to miss next week. I'll be in the process of moving, and then, and then, and so yeah, it literally sustained us all through from, gosh, I guess April all the way until probably August or September of 2020, which allowed me to pick up some other clients and some things like that, and so it's every year there's been continual growth.
Yes.
And so yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
So
Well, we're gonna loop into this. This is probably one of
mhm,
my favorite questions out of all of them, and
yep,
it's because we and I stand by this. We can't go on these journeys without our support system,
yeah,
and it happens very organically and very led in the season that we're in. So, recognizing that we all need guidance and support in our journeys, can you share a few mentors or even
yeah,
colleagues that have just played that significant role in who
oh
Ken
yeah,
is?
yeah. In my personal journey from the major shift that started happening in 2017, I had a spiritual mentor. His name is Shane Spear. He still lives in Midland. We still have contact. He recently lost his wife. Amazing guy. He was an elder at our church, um, and he and I were friends. We would go hunting together, and just connected. Both of our sons were the same age. And whenever the shift started happening, he noticed that I was struggling, and he reached out and said, "Hey, let's start a meeting together." Right. And so we met together, gosh, almost weekly for a long time. And then, of course, pandemic, it was kind of like, hey, at least let's talk on the phone. So that's definitely probably my biggest shout out was Shane Spear. Um, 20, another probably person I'd love to recognize would be Mickey Eccles. He was the pastor that was my direct report and asked me the question, if you could do anything, what would you do? And kind of led me to really consider this journey. Um, And then, gosh, my wife, of course, for supporting me. Um, I had some very, very good friends that checked on me often while I was going through the depression season, pre-COVID and during COVID. Amanda, well, it was Stark. She's gotten married. Amanda Stark, Ernie Kruger, Jody Byer, and Jonathan Perky. They were like some of my best buds that walked me through, would drag me out of the house. And then, of course, once I got here to Midland or to Waco, hiring the right psychiatrist and getting the right people on board to kind of help me navigate through. Since that time, I actually found out that I have mild ADHD that kind of was involved in a lot of that. And
Yeah.
so gotten on some medication for that as well. And right now, man, I'm an unstoppable, motivated individual. I drive my kids and my wife nuts because I tell them every day, hey, today's a great day to have a great day. And they're like, stop. I even have started using that in my reels as kind of the closing tagline, right?
Mhm.
Today's a great day to have a great day. It is, no matter
It
what you're
really is.
dealing with. Today is a
No
great
matter,
day.
yeah, you can have
Exactly.
a bad moment, a bad second, a bad whatever. Doesn't mean it's a bad day.
Yeah.
Any more panic attacks? Any more struggling there? Or?
No, 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 no. It was just a one-time thing, and it was just the weirdest sensation I've ever felt. Now then I have a daughter that struggles from that, which, but I'd never had anything like that before. It was just,
Oh, now you can relate because it's
you
it's
know,
a different struggle in that part. We're gonna wrap up here because our time is almost up. And
yeah.
what I love to do is the fun questions.
Okay.
You can't have a podcast without asking in the title, how do you unplug? Because this is Unplug with Mel. So what does Ken do that helps recharge, reset, refocused, rest? I love
Yeah.
that word, rest. How do you rest to where you
Um,
can take on the next client, take on the next season of your life?
Yeah. So one of the things that I lost when I hit major depression was tinkering, right? So like I love
Oh,
to rebuild things. I love woodworking. I love restoring things, like finding, an old, like an old Tonka truck, right? And kind of cleaning it up and repainting it and giving it a new life. I love to restore things. I love to build things with my hands, um, those kind of things. I really enjoy a good cigar. In my rush to come out here, I love a good cigar and bourbon, just to kind of wind down. I love sitting on the back in the backyard at the fire pit with a fire and having s'mores with my family. Outdoor movie nights. Um, I love cooking, right? Yeah, anything like when it comes to family stuff, I love trying new recipes and game nights and all of those things. And then when I need one-on-one time, I'm usually out in the garage organizing tools or cleaning a tool. Or last night, this weekend, I rebuilt my shop back. So
I see it.
yeah,
I see it. I
that
love
was
it.
back
Like King the Tool Man.
when Tim the Toolman Taylor and Home
Yep.
Improvement was really, really big.
Can you
And
do that?
so
Arr, arr, arr.
yeah,
There.
yeah,
I love it. Well,
so
thanks for sharing that part. As we
absolutely.
leave our audience, I hope
Yeah.
they've enjoyed this podcast and stuff. What I leave it with is, what piece of advice that you've ever received or that you said yourself or whatever that helped influence your career or the season in your life in general?
Probably the one thing that I say more often on podcasts is that your daily disciplines determine your destiny.
Mm.
Your daily disciplines determine your destiny. Now, I've heard it said various ways. That is a tweak from something I learned from John Maxwell. I just put it in my own words because I like the memorable is portable alliterations, right?
Hmm.
Um, but literally, even in my darkest, deepest depressive state, every morning I still read my Bible, prayed, and journaled, and that really helped me. And I know that the more consistent I am with daily disciplines, things like creating content and posting on social media and going to networking events, right? The more
Mhm.
intentional I am with daily disciplines, ultimately it shapes and determines my destiny. It's how I become
Very
who I
true.
want to become.
Very true. From one introvert to needed to become more of an ambivert and being an entrepreneur, it every day there's a task that sets me out of my comfort zone, and I know that once I do it, I'll be glad that I did it. But if I cross it out, make an excuse, that's not my forte. No, I don't want to go shake hands and meet new people. Then I'm going to sit in that discomfort that I did not accomplish it because that's what I meant to be stretched. I
Yeah.
meant to do things that I might not be the greatest at, but is necessary for my destiny because you
Yep.
cannot be an entrepreneur without networking, without meeting strangers, without saying, "Hey, I am Mel and this is what I'm doing." And it sounds weird saying that you approach a stranger to tell them about what your plans are, but they may know someone that you need.
Mhm.
Or, as
Absolutely.
they weeks down the road, they'll get a client or someone and they'll be like, you need to connect with Ken without a doubt. Let me do the introduction. You need Ken in your life. And by then, that's why you meant to go to that one event
Yeah.
or take that phone call or share content. Who knew how important it was to share daily social media content? I
I know,
didn't.
right?
I
Well,
didn't.
honestly,
I'm learning.
because you shared on LinkedIn that you had just gotten your life coaching certification. I mean, we'd reached out and messaged before because
Yep.
you
I thought you were
because
local and I was like,
well, and
hey,
I was part of SHRM still, I
yep,
think, at the time.
yep,
And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then because we'd interacted, you popped up in LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever better. And I was like, "Oh, yay, congratulations. If you ever need any help," right?
yep, yep.
Anytime somebody tells me that they're a coach, I'm like, "Oh, let me tell you what not to do."
Yes,
Right?
which is I felt so weird posting that I finally finished that course
Yeah.
and putting the badges out there, but I'm like, "How is anyone gonna know that I'm a coach if I don't share it?"
Yeah.
And out of the unexpected, I had no idea that a fellow coach would reach into my, messaging going, "If you ever need anything, reach out." And so immediately I'm like, "Let's get on the calendar.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
connect," because I'm intentional with that. If someone reaching out to give me a one-on-one and or just telling me what not to do because I'm still relatively new at it. And I
Yeah.
love hearing other people's stories to
Mhm.
inspire growth in me, which is
Yeah.
why the podcast came about because I
Yeah.
was like, I've been such a good sponge all my life, taking in other people's stories and lessons and utilizing them to my best ability. But if it smells, 6 degrees of separations here that allows other people to hear the story, then that's what I'm meant to do. And
Yeah.
there's not one guest that hasn't come onto this podcast in this past month that hasn't just wowed me. So I appreciate you saying yes to this and
Absolutely.
telling your story. What a story it is to be told and to endure and grow from it because you look good, you look happy, you look like you're doing it. And I know 2 years ago it looked very bleak
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything like that. I still can't believe 2020 was 3 years ago.
Yeah, right.
2 years
Absolutely.
ago, we were still going through the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
And here we are on the other side of it. And I'm glad we got to connect through it.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
think had we not endured what we endured during COVID, that
Yeah,
would have connected.
for
So
sure.
that's what we do here. It's on YouTube as well as see us on YouTube. And then we'll also be on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and I think now we're on Google. So be
Oh,
sure
wow.
to check out Mr. Ken Noble from Noble Leadership Solutions. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.